Okay, so yes, so the lovely Monika Wyss is with me, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave Monika to introduce herself and to just let us know what she does. Over to you, Monika.
Okay, thank you so much, Celeste. So I'm Monika Wyss, and I originally from Poland, so East European country, and I've been living in Malaysia for past 18 years. And since 12 years, I've been working a lot with trauma, with people who had trauma in their lives or who had trauma in their families. And I think when I look back, the whole universe of the life brought me to this work because I come from a country which was going through a lot of trauma, not only the Second World War or the First World War, but since I can remember in the history, we always have fights and we always have had wars, and it's kind of in our consciousness. So I started working with it because I had my own issues, and I found a methodology which was able to pinpoint where those issues are coming from. And I so fell in love with this modality called family constellation that I started using it, learning it. And since 12 years in Malaysia, I'm working with people individually. I'm doing workshops, seminar, and since 8 years, meanwhile, I'm teaching other people to become facilitators of this wonderful work. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so because the reason I'm reaching out to you is because, as you can see, especially the climate we are in at the moment with what's happening in the USA with racism, and then in South Africa, because I'm from South Africa, so grew up during the apartheid. And why I wanted to interview you is because I've noticed, and this is just observational, okay, is that there seems to be, in the US and in South Africa, there is a vast difference between people with lived experience of this trauma, and then people who seem to have this inherited experience of trauma. And even just in my family and friends, I've noticed that for us people who have actually lived the trauma, we seem to be doing better somehow than people who have inherited this, from generations ago. Like, I mean, look at the US, in the US, the situation with the slavery. Nobody is today has ever been a slave. So, but that experience, that trauma they seem to have. And the same in South Africa. Most of the people, like our children, they have not lived the apartheid, but they are just not dealing well with racism. So I wanted your perspective on what is happening here and what can be done, etc.
So I'm not, to be very honest, I'm not a scientist or specialist, who did a lot of research on that. But the one thing that I see continuously in my clients, and I can totally agree with you, people who have lived through trauma in their lifetimes, like it can be an abuse, it can be an accident, it can be anything when we just freeze, where shock comes and the body freezes and we are in this fight or flight mode. This is actually when trauma happens. When those people are aware of it and they are willing to look at it, they go for therapy, they deal with it because it's in the consciousness, they are aware of it, and then after a while they work through it and they become at peace. Most of the people, of course not everyone, but this is how it works. And they are amazing psychological tools to deal with this kind of trauma. EMDR is one of them. And it's very simple modality used by so many psychologists or psychiatrists even, and hypnotherapists. And it releases trauma in a very easy way, I would say. This is when it's lived.
Okay.
I think the problem with inherited trauma is we are not aware of it. We are not. How can we? We didn't live through it. Yes, maybe our parents, our grandparents. My grandparents were in a concentration camp.
Right.
Yeah, on my father's side. My mother's father was fighting in the woods. He was in the illegal army.
Mm-hmm.
So I have kind of both, both lineages were affected. But when I thought about them, I was thinking, it wasn't me, right? Because I didn't experience the war. I didn't experience the hunger. I didn't experience anything. And yet this trauma was stuck, trapped in my body. Yeah. And I think this was a problem for many years, that I was having issues. I was afraid. I was feeling guilty for no reasons. And the moment I went to look at it, because I was really sick and tired, this is when I found out, wait a moment, this is not mine. And the moment I became aware of it, only then I could work through it. And I think that's the difference. And the same is happening in the whole world right now. There are young people truly suffering from trauma symptoms and had never experienced anything like that. And I think it's because it's literally in our body, in our physical body, stuck in a way, passed through generations. And this is when epigenetics are talking about it a lot, that we are getting
epigenetics.
Okay. Yeah, the epigenetics, that we do get passed down these traumas, the emotions, and we are born with it. And when stress happens, when there is a little bit too much triggers from outside, and we can't deal with it, this is when we feel it. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, people are becoming anxious, they are becoming depressed, and there is no reason in their life. So this is how I see it. That's the difference. So for me, any way to deal with trauma is we need to become aware of it. Because when we are aware of it, then there are tools and techniques and modalities to work with it. And really a lot of tools, we can work with with ease and grace, how I call it. So, not necessary that we need to go back to the trauma and relive it, because then we can become
regression.
Of course. So okay. I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it at all. And with inherited trauma, you can't do that. We can't do that because we were not there. But we can tap into our body, and we can use other modalities like the one I'm using, family constellation, to become aware. What kind of emotion is there? What kind of sensation does the client feel in his body? And we can work with this. Yeah, or EMDR. EMDR is really amazing technique too.
What is EMDR?
EMDR, we are working with eye desensitization movement. Yeah, okay. So I don't work with this. I'm not there yet. This is my next step. I want to learn it. Because I just finished my clinical hypnosis course, and this is when it was mentioned, and I have had session on myself. So basically what's said is that the moment there is a trauma happening, something happens in our bodies, as I said, freeze or flight or fight. And what happens as well, it gets stuck in our eyes. So our eye stops moving for a moment, that's normal. When we are in shock, or when we even suddenly,
you see the eyes are like that.
Yes, exactly. And then the body gets kind of frozen for a moment. Exactly. So what happens in this moment, this gets stuck. And what the practitioners do, the EMDR practitioners or therapists do, they are working with those eye movements. So they are going back to where really the body got stuck, and they release that with the movement. Yeah. So it's similar to what I do with family constellation.
Okay, so I want you to just tell me a little bit about what you do with family constellation.
Yes. So family constellation is an amazing modality to look at the underlying dynamics, hidden dynamics that we don't know consciously about, that actually run our lives. So we experience a lot of patterns. Sometimes we are repeating patterns like in the family through generations. There is a lot of divorce. There is a lot of abortions or miscarriages. Or, for example, there can be a pattern that we are trying to build up a business and we are building up, and then it collapses. Then we build up again, it collapses. It's a pattern in our lives. And very often we can find the root cause of these kind of patterns in the past. And I'm not talking in our past only, but in the past generations. Okay. So I give you an example with this, my grandfather, my mother's side, who was a partisan basically, so the illegal army so-called. So what happened was, since I remember, Celeste, I felt always guilty if people asked me out and paid for my coffee or for my lunch. Oh. I had to really difficult.
I don't have that problem.
And you know, when you look at the spirituality, New Age, people would say, "Oh, law of attraction, blah blah blah."
Yeah.
But I thought this is not normal. It cannot be that I'm going out with a friend and I have the urge to pay all the time. Mm-hmm. And then when she paid, and this was already 15 years ago, this is when I realized that pattern. And it was happening for many years with my boyfriend, with my very good friend. Then I was in Malaysia already. And I thought, this is really not normal. She paid for my lunch. I went home and I felt guilty.
Yeah.
And I'm like, crazy. So I was in a training to become family constellation facilitator back then. And I thought, this is a wonderful topic to look at. You know, why am I constantly feeling guilty for getting a coffee? So, you know, it's really just funny subject. And then we did a constellation. I will explain to you how it works, but we did a constellation and we found out it was not my guilt. Mm-hmm. I was feeling the guilt of my grandfather. Okay. So I was carrying in my body, in my heart, in my mind, I don't know, I would say in my subconscious, right? Because I wasn't aware of it at all. I was only aware of it that I feel it, but it didn't make sense. And when I just realized, wow, this is my grandfather's guilt. So mm-hmm. he did something considered wrong, whatever it is. We didn't find out what it was. And my grandfather passed on already back then, so I couldn't ask. But we just found out that this is his guilt. So mm-hmm. what I did, I acknowledged that it was his.
Right.
I gave it back, really with love and respect, and zero judgment, because we always do the best we can. You know, right. even if it's not the best decision, it's in the best decision in this moment. 5 seconds later, we might regret it. Mm-hmm. But in this moment, we really always do our best. So who am I to judge someone, and especially my grandfather? So I gave it back to him. And this was happening in Germany when I was learning. Came back to Malaysia. 1 week later, the problem was gone. Oh. So now you can ask me out for coffee or lunch, and please feel free to pay for me. I will say thank you. I will feel my gratitude, and I will definitely not feel guilt. Of course, there always has to be balance. Yeah. Right. So that's also something very important. So I would never just, get people paid for me only. There must be balance. But this was totally unhealthy, I tell you. And it went off. Celeste, it went off like magic. And I have hundreds of these kind of stories. In my own family, quite a number. Mm-hmm. And of course with my clients, because we very, very often hold to trauma, emotions, or we are representing an excluded person from our family system. Mm-hmm. Was for some reason excluded. Maybe because it was a black person, maybe because it was homosexual, maybe because there was mental illness. I have many things in my own family. Suicide. Mm-hmm. So all those little things that of course, nowadays are much more tolerable. People are more tolerant towards, right?
Right.
But 50 years ago, 30 years ago, Down syndrome children,
Yes.
handicapped children.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, my parents were telling me how many children were just put into a home because they were not normal,
Normal, yeah.
whatever normal was. Yeah. So this is trauma that not only we carry as people, as persons, but we carry it for our system. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody was excluded for whatever reason, it's we carry it, and our job is really to include everyone, to accept everyone whoever belonged into our family system. And in a way, I feel when we are aware of this trauma, it's good to heal it. I wouldn't say it's our responsibility, because our responsibility is just to take care of our lives, I believe, and of course our children, our family, but not necessarily, doing healing for past generations. And yet, when it comes up in our life, it's just good to do it. Yeah. And family constellation is just one of these incredible modalities which can help a lot.
Wow. Okay. So I want to also ask now, because I know you have a service where you actually work with clients, and then you also run courses where you actually teach family constellation. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about where you teach, how we can get hold of you, etc.?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have opened up my center called Heart Sanctuary in Kuala Lumpur. And this is where I teach. This is where I always wanted to have my own space. So, I was going from one center to another, teaching there, doing my sessions there, doing my sessions at home. And then I thought enough is enough. Why not opening up my own center? And I was always having this beautiful name in my mind about sanctuary. And because the modality family constellation is all about heart and all about love, why we do repeat those patterns is out of blind love, So it's really love is at the center of everything, and especially this wonderful modality. So yes, 5 years ago, it will be in September, I open up Heart Sanctuary. 5 years. And I'm teaching the course, which is 1 year program, because people who want to become facilitators like me, they have to go through personal healing first.
Right.
And Celeste, probably that every family has a lot of trauma, a lot of drama, right?
We don't even have to go to movies or theater to see drama. Like my family, I can just stay in the living room.
Exactly. We have movie at home. So that's why it's not just a weekend course where we show how to do it. Anyway, it wouldn't be possible to do it. But it's really 1 year program where people are going through incredible, personal development program. Right. They heal, they become aware, they finally draw a genogram, a family tree. So they start asking questions. Mm-hmm. Many people who come to me, they tell me, oh, I don't know anything about my family. And the founder of Constellation work, Bert Hellinger, he was German. He just passed on last. Yes, Bert Hellinger. He passed on last year at the age of 94. He always said, if we don't know our history, we are doomed to repeat it. I know it's not his quote. He took it from someone, I just don't know from whom, but it's true.
This is actually what is also happening with a lot of like Black people in the US and like us in South Africa, because what was done to us is our roots have been stripped. So a lot of us don't have it. Like me, people always ask, what is your race? Because I'm so mixed. Yeah. And this has never been taught to me. It has never been told to me. No one said you are this, and this. But if I ask my white friend in South Africa, they can tell you I'm German of Dutch descent with a mixture of French. I had to go and look for it myself, because, like you say, if you don't know your history,
you are doomed to repeat it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Celeste, and did you find it healing after you found out where you're actually coming from, right?
Yes, yes, because all the insecurities I used to have, maybe with my hair, or because, you know, people were always, the first thing they when they look at me, they're very confused at what I am, or, you know, it used to bother me, you know, because it's like so personal, like people, what are you? It's so personal. Or why is your hair like that? Or why is your skin that color, but your hair looks like that? But, you know, and it used to, but then when I found out, well, I mixed this, now it's just like, yeah, well, I get it now. So yeah, it healed.
Yeah.
I healed from it. Yes, yes, definitely.
And I remember that I was asking you the same question, that you South African, you don't look South African.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Yes. And yes, and before that would have bothered me. But even my sexuality, I mean, I am heterosexual, but because of the way I look, the way I walk, the way I move, you know, people just assume that I am a boy when I was younger, or when I work, when I'm on stage, they assume I am a transgender person. I'm a man pretending to be a woman. And that used to also bother me. But then when I researched about my history, I don't want to go too much into that because that's family secret. But when I searched my history, I understand why I move the way I move, why I look the way I look, why when people see me, they have this perception. And then all I did with it is I use it to my advantage. Most of the time I work as a transgender person. That's why I say I'm gender situational. You see, because that's the healing. So you are right about the history.
And you know, just by the way, Bert Hellinger, who is the founder of Family Constellation, he lived in Zulu tribe. In South Africa. I think it was in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. He was a missionaire there. Actually, a lot of this work, Celeste, had their roots in Zulu tribes and their family dynamics and how they look at life. And, you know, and this is so universal. It's not that it's, you know, tribal modality, not at all. It's really universal. And it shows us that every family is the same because all of us have just one mother and one father, biological, right?
Yeah, biological,
and the rest is history, of course. But this is where it starts. And I think this is exactly what you are saying, you know, the roots. And the roots, to me, it's just the foundation of everything. And if we cannot be at peace with our roots, then we are really fighting and searching for something our whole life. Whole life. And we never find it. You know, people are saying, I found God, I meditate, I pray. But still something is missing very often. And these are the roots. Yeah. So it's so important. And that's why I just focus on that, you know, and this is what I teach. This is what I do with people online, in person, in groups. And I'm so happy because the practitioner numbers in Malaysia are really, you know, growing. It's growing. That's so beautiful. The modality comes from Germany. So in Europe, family constellation is well known. Meanwhile, it is a part of psychology studies at the university. In Asia, it's a little bit less known, but so important, especially in Malaysia with all those different cultures, you know? And the roots, different roots, because tell me, who is really Malaysian? You know,
I look at my son. My son is like supposed to be 100% Malaysian, but I'm mixed and his father is mixed.
Exactly. So even he's not 100%. I mean, of course, he's Malaysian, but the roots
are not. Is not. No, not at all. Exactly. I think only maybe 8% is Malaysian.
That's not much.
That's not much. Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, his ancestors are from Java and China, and, you know.
Exactly. And I think this is really one of the most important things we need to acknowledge. And already by acknowledgement where we come from, we also acknowledge the trauma we bring with us as well. Because there is this collective trauma. As you know, you South African, you have it a lot, like me, Polish, Second World War. I'm not Jewish, I'm Polish, but so I was not as affected as, you know, as Jewish people, for example. And yet my both parents were in a concentration camp. So this was in my field. This was in my bones, in my flesh, this fear of not surviving, of fear of not getting enough food. As I said, even though, you know, there was never hunger in my family, right?
Right.
Never. But it was 2 generations ago. So this is what we carry forward. And the beautiful thing in Heart Sanctuary, we can deal with it with family constellations, but we can also deal with it with other techniques, you know,
Okay.
energy healing. And you know, some wonderful practitioners who are working with me,
Yes,
like, you know,
yes,
Lynette and
yes, I know.
Sundar
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
other people. And we are just, you know, I think we have one thing in common. We have a big heart and we just want as many people as possible to know that there is always way out.
Okay, wow, thank you so much, Monica, for that information. And because I know it will be very helpful to a lot of people. And I hope that they will get in touch with you, because I think a lot of us can overcome our problems with trauma by through the Family Constellation Program. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Celeste. Thank you very much.